All right, our last storyteller for the evening. JP spent his 21st birthday on a fishing boat out in the waters of Alaska with a group of total strangers who probably really didn't care if he lived or died. Please welcome JP Frary with his story, Fish Story.
Before I start my story, when I was walking here, there was a guy walking two three-legged dogs. And that has nothing to do with anything, but I've never seen that in my life, and it was fucking cool. I turned 21 in the hold of a boat in the middle of the Bering Sea. I'd got a job on a fishing boat right off the dock. Everybody on the boat was at least 20 years older than me. And all of them had worked on the boat for about 20 years. And no one gave a shit about me. When you're the new young kid, you do all the shit jobs. You do bait cutting, bagging the bait. You mend nets. You have to climb on top of a stack of crab pots in the middle of a rolling sea and tie ropes to them. And when you're fishing, everybody works. But once you set pots or set nets, there's really not a lot to do for everybody else. Except the young guy. The young guy has to work. And I would work 20-hour shifts. And I was working one of those 20-hour shifts on the 4th of July. I was born on the 4th of July. And I was in the hold of the boat, and I could hear people getting drunk, shooting fireworks off. I could feel the boat sway because they were fucking around with the boat. And I said, when we get back to land, I'm going to quit. This is not for me. We roll into Dutch Harbor and offload the fish, and I walk to the captain to tell him I'm going to quit. And the captain, before I can say anything, goes, "Here's your share." And he hands me a stack of $100 bills. Now, in Alaska, you don't get paid in a check when you work on a fishing boat because there's no bank. So you would have no idea if that check that you were written was good or not. So it's really this weird cash business. And I had never held $6,000 in cash before. Never. And I looked at that money and went, oh, fuck, I have to get back on this boat. Like, I could pay for a whole year of school if I just stick this out. So we have an 8-hour turnaround in Dutch Harbor. You get 8 hours on land to do whatever you got to do, and then you have to be back on the boat to go back out for 2 more weeks. So I ran to a laundromat because I hadn't washed my clothes in 3 weeks, and everyone on a fishing boat smells exactly like a fishing boat. I ran to a store, I bought a few things that I thought would help me, and then I went to the post office. And I walked up to the clerk and I said, "Do you have anything addressed to general delivery for JP Frary?" And she said, "You're the guy. You're the winner. You have more mail than anybody." And she brings this stack of envelopes out and hands it across to me. And they're all thick. And I order them really quickly in the order that I would like to read them because I have to get back to the boat like right now. And I just stuff them in my bag and I head back to the boat. The first couple hours when you're at sea, heading back to fishing grounds, you have a lot of work to do on a boat. You have to coil rope, you have to stow buoys, there's things that have to be tied down. But after everything's done, you really have 2 days before you get to the fishing grounds. So everybody kind of just beds down and does their thing. So I waited for the crew to go to their bunks, and I went and sat at the table in the galley, and I took my mail out. The first letter on top was from my older sister, Annette, and she just described what she was doing for the summer. She was working at a camp as a counselor, and she'd fallen off a horse and broken her arm. And she got another job doing something else because she couldn't be at the camp, and it was this long, like, just the nuts and bolts of what she did, the family barbecue stuff, and it was really sweet. And the last line, she said, "Oh, by the way, I'm dating Ed." And I went, "Fuck!" And I slammed my fist on the table. And a voice from the bunks goes, "What was that?" And I went, "I got a letter from home, and my sister's dating my best friend." And he goes, "Oh man, I would not like my sister to date any of my friends." And I said, I know every shitty thing that guy's ever done. I know every shitty thing she's ever done. And I hear another voice go, wait a minute, you got mail? And one by one, these 40 to 50-year-old men climbed out of their bunks and came and sat with me at the table. And they said, read it out loud. Read that letter out loud. And I'm like, this is a little weird. And I realized I'm the only person that got mail. So I read that letter from my sister. And when I was done, they laughed, and they all told their little story of whose sister they dated. And one guy married his friend's sister, and it went back and forth. And the guy said, read the next letter. And I was like, really? And he goes, read it. Just read the letter. The next letter is from my younger sister, Colleen. She's a teenager. She's in high school. And her letter is very concerned with MTV. It had just come out. She did not want to be looking like Madonna like the other girls, but she admitted to being something called a Duranny. She's a fan of Duran Duran. By the way, she was in the Reflex video in the crowd of 1 million people. So I'm reading her letter, and it's sweet, and she talks about getting rollerblades and earrings and a haircut, and she ends with, can you please write a letter to Annette and tell her to stop making out with Ed in front of me. The fishermen laugh, and they talk about their kid brothers and their little cousins and whatever. And they go, read the next letter. The next letter is from my friend Brian. And Brian is desperately trying to come out of the closet, but lives in a rural area where we grew up in Northern California. And in the 80s, this was not a thing you could do. And he is hinting in the letter about moving to San Francisco to find a community. And I know what this means, but these are rednecks from Alaska. I don't think they know. And then I'm worried if they know, oh, some homophobic shit is going to come out now. And he explains what he wants to do. And, you know, I really want to find some people that understand me. And when I finish the letter, they know what he means. One of the guys talks about his gay uncle who has a lover but has to keep it hidden. And another guy talks about his cousin who's a lesbian, and everybody knows she's a lesbian because of the mullet, but she's still in the closet. And these men, they were rooting for my friend Brian. They understood, even though it wasn't in their wheelhouse to accept him openly, they understood how fucked up it was. Read the next letter. The next letter is from a family friend of ours whose husband had just recently died. She was a woman in her early 40s. And her letter, it was very sad. It wasn't sad on purpose. She said happy birthday to me, and everybody went, it's your birthday? And I was like, yeah, it was fucking 2 days ago. But her letter was about what it's like to be gardening at the house without her husband. And they had this elaborate garden. And it was about the things that you have to take care of when you're alone and you don't have a partner. I teared up. And when I looked up, those motherfuckers were crying. And they were talking about their mom after their dad died and about their aunt who was living alone. And everybody had a story about what it's like to lose someone. This woman was in her 40s. Her husband dying was sudden, and it affected them, and it affected me. The next letter was from my mom. My mom just ranted about the deer eating her plants. It was one endless thing about what am I going to do to stop the deer? She read this thing in National Geographic that wolf urine repelled deer, and she was trying to find it. Now, there's an internet now, but there wasn't back then. I'm sure you could find it now, but she couldn't find wolf urine. So then she read, if you tied tinsel and human hair to your plants, the deer wouldn't eat them. And she said, it's like a hillbilly Christmas tree. And then she said, I'm thinking of going out there and just peeing all around the plants myself. And these guys were in hysterics. They were laughing. Like, oh, your mom's a riot. Oh, my God, your mom's a riot. And her last little thing was, I'm sure you know by now that Annette and Ed are dating. They're very inexperienced. One of them's going to get pregnant. Expect a December wedding. The wedding was in February. I have 2 letters left. One is from my ex-girlfriend, who I slept with the night before I left for Alaska. The other one is from my dad, and I palm the one from my dad and hide it under my bag, because my dad and I have a strained relationship. I kind of feel like my dad is a man of few useful words with me at the time. And I don't see eye to eye with him on a lot of things, and I just don't want to read that letter out loud. So I tear open my ex-girlfriend's letter, and I pull the letter out, and the smell of perfume comes out of the envelope. It's powerful. And I take a whiff, and the guy to my right goes, hand me that. So I am reading the letter while they are passing the envelope around, and a couple of them take whiffs that look masturbatory to me in some weird way. They're like, and her letter is all about cooking school. She's going to cooking school, and she had to render a chicken, and she had to disembowel a duck, and then she was describing pig entrails. And one of the guys goes, you have to stop. You have to skip that part. You have to skip that part. And I'm like, dude, we cut up fish every day. And if something about the pig entrails sets him off, I skip to the last line, and she says, I'm so glad we spent the night together right before you left. When you get back, maybe things could work out. And I go, that's it. Those are my letters. And one guy goes, no, man. I saw you hide a letter. And I was like, look, man, it's a letter from my dad. And I got a weird relationship with him. And the captain of the boat goes, listen, man, we know everything about you now. Like, read the letter, man. And it's the thickest one. And I tear the envelope open, and it's not a letter. It's a piece of poster paper that he's folded up. And he's drawn pictures on it. It's all stick figure pictures of everything my family has been doing for the summer. There's a picture of my little sister with rollerblades on, this weird haircut and hoopy earrings, and there's a thought bubble that says gross, and it has an arrow pointing to my older sister with a cast on and Ed trying to kiss her. And there's a picture of my mom being chased by deer with her cat eye glasses and her cigarette, and There's another picture of our family friend gardening with a sad face on. And then there's a picture of my dad with a tool belt and a fence. And there's a caption, and it says, could use some help. Your pop. I show them this. And the reaction at first is laughter, and then it is actually quiet. And I can tell they are thinking of their families and the people that they're missing while they spend the summer on a fishing boat. The whole rest of that trip, I was treated very differently. I was treated like a person with a story. And they told me their stories. In fact, after a little while, people started going, oh, the kid from California is the therapist on the boat. But I was given a gift. Several of these people are dead now. I was given a gift from them, a gift that says you are a member of a community. And when you can show that to another community, you will be accepted. Thank you.